So, vielen Dank. Das kann ich sagen. Thank you very much to the organizer for inviting me, to giving me the possibility to speak today. Yeah. So, I'm not an expert of Edith Stein. I'm more an expert on brain circuit. So, we will make a kind of parallel with what Dr. Herman said before, how the neuron code and express empathy. Let's start. So we can begin with something very general. How the interest in science, in mind, has been since the beginning of the world, we would say. So at the very beginning, people thought that the intellect and the cognition reside on the heart. And this is quite easy to understand. You feel the beating of your heart when it's an emotion, but of course you don't feel the brain in a way. And so there was also a big dispute over perception and learning. So how do we learn something about our world? Is because we receive stimuli from this world, or is something like Plato thought is perfect, something that resides in a different world? And then, slowly scientists take a bit of part of this discussion, and they start doing behavioral experiments with animals. Not animals, also humans. So at the beginning, there was this idea, there is a stimulus, there's a black box, and out of this black box, a response will come. It's like when you turn on the light. I push the button, the light is on. But then slowly, people understand this is not so simplistic. How really this functions? So the idea here is that it's a bit more complex, and all the functions that we can think like is thinking, decision-making, emotion, are all processes within this black box. So the stimulus come in, within there's something going on, and then the response is the fruit of this decision, or this is cooperation of brain structures. And this is one of the last theory. This is really a relationship that guides every process in the brain. There is no one structure that is involved, but many different playing its own role. And at the end, is like something like in physics you have is the vector, the response. So everyone express something, and at the end is the majority that makes final decision on working, thinking, and memory retrieval. And so one of the scientists that have a lot of roles in this is Donald Hebb, this is her name, and he made this clear that the cognitive processes are, carried on by brain circuit. It's not just one cell or one structure. And how does it happen? It's like you have a highway, and you're build more highways so that you can connect more regions that are then able to cooperate and to express function. After all this, is this anything in the brain that can tell us there are circuits that actually can express empathy? And before we go ahead, I'll just give you a bit of lectures of what is the small entity in the brain that we call a neuron. And this, as you can see here, this structure has a center here, which is like the integration part of the cell. It's the soma of the cell.
Das ist das Soma oder Zellkörper.
Yeah. Then we have these dendrites that are like antennas that captures all the signals that are in the environment and drive into the soma. Information will come from different cells that will all integrated in the soma. At the end, the final answer will be driven through the axon, which is here, to other cells. So you can think already this is a relational structure. You receive something from the environment, integrate, and send a message to the rest of the brain. And here is just, how it's really in reality. Many different neurons are overlapping or integrating. You see here this axon, is going, there is an axon here that goes, I will indicate by hand here. And while it's going, it's making contact with many different cells, delivering the message. Okay, so now we can move, after having this background, let's see how empathy works in the brain. This is a picture of Professor Rizzolatti in Parma, and he worked with monkey. They were studying how motor function is expressed, how the neurons work to produce a motor action. And then years later, they ask you, what did you understand? And he said, we have discovered how to put yourself in the shoes of others. But to do this, I will let him actually describe the experiment. Anyways, there is this monkey that is grasping. Yes. So the video will show that there is a monkey that is trying to take something to eat. And there are electrodes that are recording the activity of the brain. So you see, you could hear a discharge, a sound whenever this neuron is active and is sending those messages that we were talking before. And then it was at a certain point, they stop it and they have a break in the lab. They stop it, they have a break in the lab, and the scientists start taking an apple and eat. And the machine was on, still recording the activity of the neuron of the monkey. And what they hear was the same sound. So the neuron was not only active when the monkey was doing the motor action of eating, but also when he saw something else doing exactly the same action that he knew how to do. So this is very important. This is not just a general way of functioning. The neuron can fire or can be active when it's some action that we already know, that we have done by ourselves. So, of course, if there was another example, for example, when you see someone else playing football, because if someone has already learned how to play football, you will have a different kind of encoding of this action as high that I never played, for example. Okay, so these are just, as scientists like to present their data, are figures with, the activity that you see here are like these neurons. Each one of these small dots are the word that a neuron is saying to the other, to the environment, actually. And you can see that here is in a graph. As soon as the monkey makes the action, there is an increase in the activity of this neuron. You can see that when the monkey does the action of grasping, at first, here in something in the table, there is an increase in activity and this kind of Gaussian shape. And this is still the brain of the monkey, but this time is when he's seeing that a human is actually taking to grasp. So it's a little less, but it's still quite active. This we can skip because we already say. So now we go to something a bit different. And this experiment was also done, but this time with humans. So there are two tables set here. So you have here a table on the left, right, on the left, where it's quite clean. And someone is taking the cup, but with a very gross kind of activity. It's not a very precise. It's just, as you see, the hand is taken not from the cup, from the entire cup, not from with a precise. While in the other one, the table is quite dirty, but the action is like, it's typical an action when you take a cup to drink. And if you can imagine, these are kind of conflicting images, because on the first one, when it's clean, you can imagine that someone is taking the cup to drink, while when it's dirty, you could imagine someone is taking the cup to clean up, like you would say in the first pictures. And all this experiment was designed exactly to understand if mirror neurons is able to understand and to code the intention that is behind an action. Again, recordings. What then is very important is that mirror neurons can also help in understanding the intention, so help us to interact with the others and to decide if I want to be cooperative or if I want to be antagonizing some action of the others. And so another function is here. They are very important for imitation. And as you see in this very simple, this could be a mechanism also for learning. So to passing information between generations, but also to pair. How do I learn? Just by watching other people doing some action. And then we go to something that probably everyone knows now, how to connect when you see a strong emotion in the other people. And this goes back to this resonance mechanism. I understand the others because I have one time cried, I have yelled, I have smiled. So I know how is the motor action of the other person and what is the outcome. But if I see something in the middle, even if they are both have the open mouth, it's different from the third pictures. And so we go back to this guy that was yesterday actually mentioned, Theodor Lips, that he said that the critical role of inner imitation of the action of others in generating empathy. From neurobiology, you can express this concept thinking at the first box that I was showing you, where different groups of neurons were connected. It's like once you see someone else, these neurons will again reconnect, and then I will be conscious of the others because they are reproducing exactly the same path of activation. And again, here about the we understand other emotion because we can imitate, and just briefly, they activate exactly the same regions during understanding or during when we feel the same emotion. So of course, when all this study came out, there are many people that were skeptic. They did not believe that this could be as has been shown. You criticize and think, I can't imagine, because if you have something like that, it must be a neuronal substrate that is preserved across generation and across species. So the simple way to do that is then you take some animals that are not so, they don't have developed cortical structure, for example, or everything. Yeah, so they did this example where they have a mouse that is observing, this observer, and the other mouse, the target, and they receive a mild foot shock to this foot. Of course, this is not pain, but of course it's something that they don't like. And they put themselves in a very specific pose of the body, which is the correspondent of fight and this kind of that in humans are like. And they found that also the observer, as soon as he saw the target putting himself in this position, he went in exactly the same position, even if he did not experience any foot shock. Mm-hmm. So until now, we have not discovered any mirror neurons in mice, but that means that there are other mechanisms that is not just about mirror neurons. The brain is able to be empathic across many different ways. And so this is really relevant for survival, for example. It's a basic mechanism that helps species to survive just watching what your pair is going through. Okay, one last. This study is from Professor Lam, that is actually working here in Vienna, at the University of Vienna. He did a very interesting experiment. He chose two pairs, wife and husband, or brothers and sisters. Again, he gave a very mild shock on the hand of one of these, and the other was observing. He discovered that not only the same regions of the brain are activated in both these two persons. So, for example, attention, because you have to be attentive to what is going on, or the insula, which is very much involved, is a region involved in sociability. Also, the circuit of the pain circuit were activated equally in the two, even if the other person did not feel any physical pain. And this was also interesting by itself, I think. But then he made a further step, and he gave paracetamol, which is a painkiller, to the observer. And he brought back the activity of the brain circuit. So this is really a physical. It's not just a thinking, but it's something that is physically related to our brain.
Yeah.
Okay, and one last thing, we mentioned that, of course, because some psychiatric disorders involve the deficiency in relate to the others, they discovered that in these people, the activity of the mirror neurons is also affected. Autistic and schizophrenic, for example. Yeah. And so they saw that in autistic, for example, the activity of the mirror neurons is quite flat, as you can see there on the right. So that means they are not simply active. They are not responding to the stimulus. Almost finished. Now there is a slide to summarize. Do you want to do it yourself?
Okay.
One last remark. So at this point, now a question comes. Is all about mirror neurons? No, because our brain is so complex, and this actually what comes out is again an expression of cooperation between different areas. It's more like this. So there are functions that probably one region is leading, but then it will be expressed only after a cooperation between different brain areas and different neurons. How all of this is coordinated is like when you are familiar with EEGs. So is the
Entschuldigung, ich habe
EEGs. Is this that create the ground in which all neurons can speak and activate. They are active at very precise time, and this is this precision that makes synchrony in the brain. To understand, like these pictures is right nice. So once everyone goes in his own way, there is no synchrony. There cannot be an activity that's been coordinated. Is rather in the other sections when everyone goes in the same direction, it creates a rhythm, and this rhythm helps in cognitive functions. And here we go back to the first slide. So it's not just about perceptions. It's also about being aware of what is going on, consciousness, and to make a decision, to decide what to do with what I am feeling, what I experience. To say in simple words, I could see someone that is suffering. I know that is suffering. I can decide what to do, how much I get involved, how much I stay aside, if I help or if I go my own way. So to feel the others is not enough to be empathic, to express empathy. And I want to conclude with one, because all of us, we are not only, as a scientist, I will stop here, but also I'm a person of faith, so I can go a bit more ahead. And I'm a member of the Focolare movement, so I've been experienced what is Chiara Lubich message about unity and relationship among peoples. And in her vision, the model is the Trinity. Is how the Trinity interact, where in time one is the Father and the other one is the Son, that makes the possibility to build this relationship. And especially when in the gospel we see this, what Jesus say in the prayer for unity, that we can be one, as in the Trinity relationship, Jesus say, as I am in you and you are in me. So in this way, for us, the way in which really we penetrate the other people is through Jesus in a way. Because the Jesus in me and this in the others, this is what makes me in a more spiritual way in a relationship with other people. Okay, but I know that there are theologians that would talk tonight about, so I'm not very, but thank you. This was the last slides.